In today's fast paced world, music is an omnipresent force that accompanies us in our daily activities almost constantly. It's in lobbies, it's in elevators, it's at grocery stores, it's in advertisements, it's all over the place. Whether you're just walking down the street, the odds of you hearing music are pretty high considering cars can drive by you playing music super loudly. You can be walking past a store that has outward speakers, but how often do you think about what the first music would have been like? What when you hear Bon Jovi at the grocery store while you're looking at how terrible all the tomatoes are, do you think about the first people to ever make notes what music used to sound like? Do you maybe you're a classical music fan and you're like, I appreciate old music, but do you think about the first instruments ever made? Music has a long, long history tied to humans, and almost as far back as humans go, music, as we see it now, has been there. It wasn't a bunch of guys hanging around a campfire playing Wonderwall on some sticks and stuff. It was, how voices were amplified to communicate in really intricate cave systems as the way the echoes bounced off the cave walls to signal that somebody was coming or that there was, a hunt was starting, to instruments being made to instill fear in an enemy that was far away. Blow these loud horns and they don't know what's going on and they are scared, right? And then all the way into the Middle Ages, where music plays a big part in kind of emphasizing the biblical messages inside of cathedrals, and moving into the 21st century, how music becomes an outlet for people to claw their way out of lower socioeconomic ways, and then also how people began to use music to manipulate other things such as ad revenue, listening charts, and even the Mafia getting involved in some of the jukeboxes. All of that and more on another episode of The Remedial Scholar.
That's ancient history.
I feel I was denied critical, need to know information.
Belongs in a museum, bro.
Stop skipping your remedial class.
Welcome everyone to the Remedial Scholar. I'm your host Levi. It's great to see everybody that I can't see again. With me today, I have a special guest, a good friend of mine who has some knowledge in the music industry and business, and he's just a all-around fantastic dude. Matt, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now, Matt, you have had a band, Lucid Wasteland, which has been a friend to the various podcasts I've been on. And you recently did your final album. You want to tell everybody about that before we go?
Yeah, dude. So basically, we just finished recording an album. Well, we just released it. Pretty much, it's digitally available. It's up on Apple, Spotify, pretty much anywhere you can stream your music. You can also purchase it off of iTunes, I believe. Either way, we are collecting funds from this album, so every time you stream this, it adds a little bit of that to our funding, and we are donating that to Alex's Lemonade Stand to help with pediatric cancer research. And yeah, we hope you like it. It's our final album and a tribute to our friend and founding band member, Caleb Sabrin.
Yeah.
Passed away while we were getting this album together. Yeah, this is kind of, this is for him.
Yeah.
So, and he wanted to help the kids out, so, we're kind of, doing that in his honor. And,
Yeah.
Go check it out, guys.
Yeah.
We put a lot of work into it, and we're really proud of it.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had the whole band on Westbind and West of Nowhere, I think, at least once on each, maybe. Are or maybe just Westbine for sure. But it was always a treat having everybody on. And Caleb was he's a super funny dude, and we're gonna miss him. And also the background track for West of Nowhere is just the instrumental for one of the songs. So if you have heard that and enjoy it, then definitely check it out. I should have worn my Lucid Wasteland shirt. I forgot I had it, and I was cleaning and I found it. I was like, oh, but I'm rocking Blondie today. But hey, that's all right. I also appreciate the way that you guys handled that, because I don't know, it feels like it's kind of, when you get into that position, it's a toss up. Like, do you go the Led Zeppelin route or do you go the Who route? You know what I mean? So
I mean, it wasn't really an easy decision to come
Sure.
to. At the end of the day, it just, Caleb and I kind of, we started this as a, project just to kind of, be creative, and, without him being there, it just wasn't
not
really
the same. Yeah.
And it ended up, just not being like as fun. I found that, I lost like a lot of the passion behind it. And,
Sure.
For me, it was like, okay, yeah, it's time.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for coming on. I'm happy to have you, and I hope everybody goes and checks out the album. Now today we are going to be talking about the history of music, and it's there's a lot. There's it's a long history. I'm sure everybody's kind of aware. Do you have any super wealth of knowledge about music history in general, or do you just kind of have like a passing interest in that kind of thing, or what's your skill level on that if you were to rate it?
I remember learning about periods
Yeah,
of music,
sure.
like Baroque.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the only one I remember. I like to listen to classical music,
sure.
but
Heck yeah. All right, well that's
yeah,
good,
I
because
couldn't name a whole bunch of it.
you're gonna be learning today, so which is great. It either way it would have been great, but I just wanted to get a quick gauge on how much background you had. So yeah, we're going to be going through all the way back from when people were beating their tummies like drums, and then Beethoven, and all the way to our Lord and Savior Taylor Swift. We're gonna hit all of it.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of evolution to it. There's there's some darker aspects, especially when we get into the 20th century, that I'm really excited to talk about, because I think a lot of that kind of, if it does get discussed, it gets brushed under different things. So, we're going to get a whole lot of everything, a little bit of everything. So are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it, dude.
All right, let's get into it. Yeah, so it's hard for us to fathom how life must have been hundreds, thousands of years ago. We have the access of being able to listen to whatever music we want to pretty much anytime. So readily available. So thinking about how new of a phenomenon this is pretty weird. We get to work, shop, clean, work out, do all this stuff with music alongside us, right? And it wasn't always that possible. It's weird to think that less than 200 years ago, you would find people who wouldn't have heard their favorite pieces of music outside of 3 or 4 times in their entire lives, which is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about you, but I find a new song that I like and I listen to it about 86 times in a row. So there's at a certain point, music was so hard for people to get into their ears that they couldn't just, pop a thing on, or if they didn't have anybody musically talented in their family, they couldn't have anybody learn how to play it. So they might go their whole lives without hearing it twice.
That's insane to think about.
Yeah.
Asking somebody who their favorite band is
Yeah.
music.
Yeah. I have heard music a couple of times. And then you get to add in okay, say they do have some musical talent. Well, then do they have the ability to buy sheet music at the time? Or is it before sheet music was readily available? So you have all these extra levels of Well, maybe they lived out in the middle of nowhere and they didn't make it into town very often, so they didn't hear music very often. And it's so strange to even consider. So when you think of like ancient music, do you have any idea of what type of like old instruments they could have been using?
Oh, I don't know, like bones and like human hairs and
Hell yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Bones astute. I mean, there's evidence 40,000 years ago that they were using flutes made from hollowed out bones of different animal species, which is pretty crazy, but also like kind of cool that they were like, yeah, this makes a fun sound.
That's pretty metal,
Yeah,
to be honest.
yeah,
It's pretty brutal.
yeah. Well, and you got to think like if they were anywhere near like a larger bird species, you got birds with hollow bones, you've got like a pretty quick flute to make right there. Like it's, ready to go. And then you have horns of animals, whatever. And so that's a pretty good guess you got there. Now, before any of those, they're actually a very interesting thing that they did. There's a cave system in France, which is they found a lot of cave paintings in this system, and that was like a huge thing, right? These date back 35,000 years. And in the research for that, they found that in the parts where there are like paintings and like random tool remnants and stuff, that those caverns were actually the most, like, they had the most audible connection to the rest of the cave systems. So like you could hear stuff happening clear off in the distance from those spots that were happening in the caves. And so what they kind of put together was that in like the Descent kind of thing, where like I don't know if you ever seen that movie, but these underground creatures who rely all on system of hearing like are communicating through these tunnels in these caves because it's basically pitch black. And so you have these caverns that they can hear pretty much everything, and that's how they know A, if anything's coming to get them, B, they can communicate with each other super quick by just yelling through the caves, and the resonance in them is pretty high. So that's kind of sweet. We got a live-in kind of French horn kind of thing going on. Yeah.
Yes.
And then, yeah, beyond that, you got early rituals, stuff like that. You have, like I mentioned, and you mentioned the bone flutes and things like that. Now, we also have super early evidence of brass instruments, which is kind of surprising. It's not that old. It's not the 40,000 years old, but definitely like 3000 BCE, we have evidence of these lures. They're just simple horns made of brass. And there's, I think, two of them that still exist, but pretty kind of reshapes, and they're from Northern Europe, so it kind of reshapes this barbarian theory that we have about how Europeans were, because they were clearly chill enough that they're like, let's just make some horns, man. Granted, a lot of them probably used for war purposes too, but hey, you gotta start somewhere. And then we get ancient Egypt. We have hieroglyphics and carvings that show different harps and flutes, things like that, percussion instruments. Now, all of these are great and everything, but the music itself, we have no idea what kind of music any of these people were playing, because musical annotation did not exist until around 1400 AD. Like, it is a relatively new phenomenon. So while we can find these different instruments and things that the ancient Egyptians used, we cannot replicate any of their songs, even if we know the words or anything, because we have no way to decipher, because ultimately it was a oral tradition of like, this is how you play this song, and I will teach you, my son, and then he teaches his son, and then it all gets passed down that way. So cool that it was that kind of a close-knit group, but also sad for us because we have no idea what some power ballads from ancient Egypt might have been like.
I think it's also like interesting that their musical instruments are so like closely entwined with like their instruments of war or whatever. And, those are the kinds of things that survived.
Yeah.
For all this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the Greeks obviously took music to another level. They kind of did. They like to philosophize about different things, and so they took music and did their thing with it. Even famous philosophers like Pythagoras discovered that musical intervals, like octaves, fifths, those kinds of things, could be explained mathematical, like ratio connections, which was a big step in terms of like how to make different music and how to kind of broaden what the sounds they were making were. And again, we don't know what they were, but we now have a point where they have a system. We just don't know really what the harmonies or what the notes are. So you get these like levels of, all right, well, we know they used instruments. Like, okay, well, now we know they had a structure, but we don't know what it is. And then, well, we know what it is, but we don't know what notes they were making. And so, like, the Greeks famously big fan of the lyre, right? That's Apollo's thing. I think in any Greek painting or painting about Greece, there's one in depiction. Even like I think it was the paint or like Nero was supposedly in ancient Rome, played the lyre as Rome burned or something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and obviously the Romans would capitalize on what the Greeks figured out and kind of expand in the way that they did, which is cool. But again, they didn't continue to evolve it. They just kind of sharpened, which is basically what the Romans did with every kind of invention that they took. They're like, yeah, we like it, but we kind of want it to be like this a little bit, and that's kind of it. So it wasn't until 1000 AD where a guy named Guido d'Arezzo, he's an Italian monk, created the 4-line staff and the do re mi scale. Right now we're getting pretty modern now. We're getting Sound of Music-y, and this allowed people to finally understand and write down music, which is a big thing in terms of just historical relevance. Did you do a lot of like music in school, or was it more like I just like music and I want to play guitar kind of thing?
So I kind of grew up around it.
Yeah.
My dad was in bands when
Okay.
I was
Sure.
growing up, so he played guitar. He showed me kind of like the cowboy chords, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. And after that, pretty much just like anybody else, like looking up like tabs online
Yeah.
and just kind of figuring it out like that, learning how
Sure.
to use my ear.
Yeah. That's
But like as far as like formal education, I know very little. I should know more, but
yeah.
me
No,
dumb,
that's
me play guitar.
yeah. It's so same kind of thing with my dad. He's very like could do he could figure out songs by ear pretty quickly, and that's kind of always been his thing. When I was in 5th grade, I signed up for orchestra and then played French horn in 6th grade, and then went back to orchestra after that for a couple of years. And so like a lot of this is like it's familiar. I couldn't read music if you asked me to now, but there was a point where I could, and that was cool. But like I never even translated it into guitar playing ever. Like I just always viewed guitar as so much more complex than the French horn or the cello. Like there's just a lot more
Mm,
going on, and I'm like, I don't have the time or the patience to learn any of this. I'm just gonna do the same thing as you said, like get tabs and just figure it out that way. And
yeah.
yeah. But do re mi, like that's a super big thing. I remember learning about that in like elementary music class. We watched The Sound of Music, and that was a whole thing. So this is a big, big point in music history, and you know, after that is really when things start to ramp up, and it really isn't until I would say probably the 14th, 15th century that things like jump again, which is, now we've, in this short amount of time from, 3000 ish BCE to 1000 or BC and then CE, we have gone from it being basically a tool for different chants and rituals and things and war. And now it's like, all right, now we're kind of getting to a little more casual place with it. Granted, it was being used mostly for like religious ceremonies at the time when he made these connections, because he's a monk, obviously. Um, all right, so now singers that were involved in church singing, there was also a switch in terms of like how they decided to sing. At first they just had dudes, just old dudes, and that's it. And eventually one guy was like, what if instead of just a bunch of dudes, we get like a bunch of dudes and then like some kids to sing the same note, so it's like almost a chord, right? Which is hilarious that they're like, it took them so long to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually they're like, well, I don't know if you guys knew this, but we could probably all all these dudes could probably sing like slightly different notes at different times and stuff. Like this is like very like baby step method of slowly changing things, which if you think about it, it's the Catholic Church at the time, so they don't not really big fans of changing stuff rapidly.
They had a lot of money and a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna take our time in figuring this out. So that's what they did. Yeah, by the 1500s, ink was a big factor. Now people were able to print sheet music faster, like instead of one by one people annotating and everything, which meant that people were now able to take the music and travel and play different things like the lute or the harpsichord. Big fan of the harpsichord. I'm pretty sure if I'm thinking of the right one, it's that thing that's like in every Renaissance movie or like documentary. It's got like this really like copper kind of sound to it.
Yeah, like looks like a piano, but it's plucked
Yeah,
instead of like
yeah,
hammered, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. And so again, all the compositions primarily meant for kings and cathedrals, but then you get these people who are like able to figure stuff out on their own and kind of starting to travel very, very ever so slightly. This is like the first troubadours, is what they were like. That's what they were. They were traveling musicians, which is super kind of funny to think about at the time when it seems like Europe, especially, was just so chaotic that you had these guys like, I just gotta go to France and play some music, man.
I don't think it's changed all that much, man.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's the more things change, the more they stay the same, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so now with printing and all these things, you have the ability to print and copy and sell music on a bigger scale, which is a little closer to a more commercialized product that it is, you know, more so today. But also you get this, it's twofold. So you get people who can buy music and learn it and then travel and play it for people, but then you also get people who are now able to just make it and sell it, which is kind of interesting. Like, I don't know how many famous people there were doing that back then, but this would pave the way for the more prominent composers to enter the fold and be a little more not illustrious but profitable in terms of how their brand is coming across. So in the next few centuries you get Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, who are selling sheet music of their work as well as composing at the same time, which is interesting. I never really considered that to be a part of their thing. You can only just ever hear about them composing for the Pope or whatever, and then that's kind of it. But like they're selling their stuff in like books, like, hey, buy this Mozart Volume 5, please. Now that's what I call Mozart.
The beginning of the album.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah. So by the time the 1800s and the Industrial Revolution came around, everything is able to be produced. We have instruments now being mass produced, and yeah, they were a little more luxury item, right? But it also in the middle class became pieces of furniture. You know, this is where you get everybody kind of has a piano in their house for some reason, and then everybody has parlor rooms where they have sheet music on display. And so now everybody's able to sing music. If they have somebody in their family that can learn a piano, they can play stuff. They can buy one of these books of sheet music, and then everybody gets together for holidays or whatever, and and they get to actually hear music instead of it being like, my grandma had to travel 300 miles just to hear the sounds of a bunch of monks all sounding the same with their Gregorian chants and stuff.
Yeah, now it's all in our pocket.
Yeah, just the littlest effort, just beep. Yeah. Now, the composers, they mostly got portions of the printed royalties, but also it was not a very consistent system when it was done, because nobody's able to really track if a guy buys your book and then travels to the next town over, next country over, and then replicate it and then sell it. Nobody's able to really track that down. And nobody's going to really question a lot of it, especially if, hey, you make me 100 copies of this music book, I'm going to slide you some, and then we're gonna just make money without Beethoven knowing a damn thing. So that's a little sketchy, and also kind of funny. Again, how things kind of just stay the same throughout history. But speaking of people who like to screw people over, in 1877, Thomas Edison invented the phonograph, which is the first device capable of recording and replaying sound with efficiency. So now you didn't even have to be in the room where the music was made to be able to hear it, which is huge. Now, once this happened, this is a big moment in terms of like, all right, well, music has like this fork in the road. Now you have public performances, which people are paying for, but now if you can figure out the technology right, you can potentially massively produce this stuff and people don't have to go anywhere for it, this is like, I feel like the biggest moment in commercialization of music in general, right? And I think it is a little poetic that Edison is the one that kind of is at this fork in the road. I don't know that he knew exactly what was about to kind of be unfolded, but I feel like it's pretty on brand for him. Yeah, so the early 1900s, now alongside sheet music, there's this whole new business where potentially we could start selling recordings of this. Now, obviously, it had a little while to go before people were able to actually capitalize on it, but the foundations are there. So, all right. So, in the early 20th century, we have a couple new musical things coming around, especially in America. We have the blues, gospel, jazz, as emancipated black communities started producing their own songs, their own music, and largely wasn't really it wasn't like hey, we gotta like start showing everybody this is like, they're just entertaining themselves. But as we know, people found it very appealing and started like going, hey, you should start playing this for everybody, which is pretty cool. You get people like Robert Johnson, Ma Rainey, Bessie Smith, these people who are like the foundations of this new and very different type of music. And one of the things I was listening to about just music in general, it was how jazz was like completely hated by traditional classical music fans. Like they were so mad about it, and it wasn't even because it was primarily black people that were playing it. They were just like, you're just breaking like all the rules and I don't like it. It's so funny, like, because I think I view jazz in a different way, where jazz is like, yeah, they're doing a lot of stuff that's not traditional, but they're also extremely talented. Like they are
Oh yeah.
so good at the traditional classical music that they are able to flip a lot of these traditional things and like do crazy stuff with it. And it's so, imagining these people like, no, don't like it. It's very funny. Yeah. So that was all popping off. But then in the early 20s, we have a little thing called prohibition, which, kind of killed the whole nightclub scene pretty quickly. unfortunately for a lot of musicians that were having a lot of fun doing that. But, you know, the Mafia, they were not going to let the government take out their money. So the speakeasies started popping up, big thing going on in all the major cities. And then it's all cash driven. So there's no real way of tracking any of it. And they needed live music. So jazz started to become the place for, like, that was the music that spoke about this nightlife, and also kind of like semi illegal, which I think might have been a reason that some of these older people were like, this is bad. But it is like, at the end of the day, they're just musicians playing at a club. It's not their fault people are there for illegal reasons. They're just hanging out, man.
It's because they could see people having fun.
Yeah, I don't like it.
It's
They're just
what it
happy.
comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's because of this little side view of, or like this little path that we have going on, that the Mafia actually realized that people more often came for the music than the alcohol that was there. So, like, what if we just prop up more musicians instead of making it focused on alcohol? We make it focused on the music. And so they started funding individual musicians and buying clubs, and then like making almost like a Vegas, like, what do they call it, residency, like, for these different artists. Like, hey, you remember you saw this guy at this XYZ speakeasy? Well, here you go. He's here. Come eat dinner and listen to whatever. And people were pumped, and artists were also pumped because they were getting paid nightly rates. They got good instruments. They had regular schedules. Like, it was nice for them to be able to have a little consistency. And all while the Mafia is basically just laundering money with this, which is really funny to me. Like, not something I would have ever really thought about in terms of the first musical clubs. Like, I knew Prohibition obviously played a part in it, but you don't think about them like going straight as parting of the, or part of the Mafia, like capitalizing on it.
Back in the day when the Mafia was taking care of everything.
Yeah. And
Those were the days.
yeah, and you got gangsters like Oni Madden in New York, Al Capone in Chicago. They invested in these nightclubs super heavily. Money was dirty, but it worked. Worked really well. And then Prohibition ended, and they didn't really even have to change a whole lot. They just kind of shifted things from, instead of prioritizing liquor, they started to do something different where, well, hey, we can buy music and we don't have to pay anybody to be there to perform. So they kind of started the whole jukebox train, which is pretty interesting. So it's really weird. They like started to produce and then also fund the different jukebox like vendors and transportation, like the people who were like going place to place to pick up the money. Like, they owned that trucking company, and they were like, they just had their fingers all over everything, and it's crazy. But now that kind of live performance thing was, yeah, it's great for the big cities, but you can't get acts to go to these smaller towns, and so jukeboxes were kind of a scapegoat, or not a scapegoat, but just a stand-in for that kind of thing, which is also smart. Like, hey, it works. It kind of works for everybody. So, all right. Yeah, so these jukeboxes, people kind of viewed them, hey, I'm just going to put some money in, play a song, whatever. But like I said, really, the Mafia had owned the bars sometimes, but most of the time they just owned the machines and the company that went to go pick up the things. And then by the end of the 40s, magazines were using jukebox play counts to organize what the Billboard charts would be. So now you have this kind of murky water situation where if you really wanted to prop up a specific guy, you just had to pay the right people, and they could make sure that his music was in more jukeboxes, which is pretty crazy.
There's a whole, I believe it's called payola, right?
We're actually going to get into that here in a second.
Yeah.
So record labels, they caught on pretty quickly. If a jukebox operator could make a record look like a hit, sales would follow. People would buy the record and then also play it in the jukebox a bunch. So why not pay the Mafia to kind of make it look a little cooler? And now we have payola entering the fold, which is a mashup of pay and Victrola. It's a pretty simple format. You slide an envelope full of cash to your local radio station or wherever, and they would make sure to make that whatever band or artist or song be heard more often and frequently. Yeah, which is definitely, and this is probably one of the more prominent examples of it. Like payola is, it's not super common knowledge, but it is probably one of the more common in terms of like all of these things. Like the jukebox thing was brand new information to me. And then how they tied it into the Billboard stuff was like, okay, yeah. So this is a big part of the radio being a big, like a main way that people listen to music now is as the radio kind of kicks off. Well, you have to start paying different DJs to play some of your music, and it's like, okay, well, that's just how we do it. But that's also like the people who couldn't afford to do that, that's not fair for them. So yeah.
And nowadays, with the streaming platforms, we have playlisters
Yeah.
that you can just you can pay somebody, and I mean, I've never done it. I mean, it looks kind of scammy, kind of skeevy to me, which really it is, because like
Yeah.
I've heard like stories where these people like create like bot accounts
Right.
or whatever, and they'll bring your numbers up. So
And that's what I've always heard about it. It's like, yeah, we got bots to pump the numbers up or whatever.
I don't see how it's any different than modern day payola.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think about the playlisters or like I when I was doing this, like writing this episode, I was thinking about the YouTube reaction channels. You know what I mean? Like, there's a couple that I really enjoy, but then I get to this point in the script, and I'm like, am I being tricked? Do I want to hear this song? I don't know. But most of them that I listen to are like songs from 20, 30 years ago. So it's not like they're going to capitalize a whole lot on it. But then you have these ones that are like only new music of a certain genre. And you're like, okay, I don't know. It seems like it could be a very innocuous way to kind of be a little more popular in the the public view, but super interesting how that it's definitely got its foundations in this kind of thing. This guy Morris Levy of Roulette Records was kind of one of the first like Mafia guys to go straight in terms of his record company. He was also a big part of the payola scandal. He was really about controlling every aspect of it, and he was one of the first that kind of kept his talent people really like locked down and not willing to fight back about it. So it's like one of the first skeevy record company owners, and obviously he's got Mafia connections. Like he just went straight basically, which is great that this is where we're going. So let's see. In the 50s, by the mid 50s, radio DJs were able to be like the new gatekeepers. They were these influencers of their time. They decided which songs got airtime, and by extension, which records would sell. And naturally, labels and the Mafia made sure that these DJs were being compensated very, very heavily. The peak of this is when a Cleveland disc jockey named Alan Freed, he was one of the guys who helped popularize the term rock and roll, and he had this very energetic style, and he had an ear for very good, very new talent, especially black artists, whom he played on mainstream stations, which was, not super common at the time. But behind a lot of this energy was a quiet network of a lot of cash money moving around, and labels would pay Freed and others like him to feature their rising or prized acts, and didn't last a super long time. By 1959, the whole system kind of came down. Congress launched an investigation into this, and they found widespread bribery across the industry. DJs, executives fired and fined, and Alan Freed himself was forced out of radio completely. He died a few years later, broke, he was blacklisted, and he was kind of the fall guy, even though everybody was kind of doing it. He was the scapegoat. So it was just unfortunate for him, and kind of sad that he took the brunt of it. But now that everybody is kind of aware of it, they didn't change what they were doing. They just kind of changed how they were doing it. Instead of cash envelopes, they had promotional budgets. Instead of mobsters, they had middle managers. And, a lot of this language and stuff changed, but they kind of kept doing the same thing. They just got a little more creative. The jukebox era definitely introduced new and dangerous ideas that you could engineer popularity, which is, kind of a scary thought, but I think it's pretty evident in terms of like some of the, you have people who discuss new talents or new artists now as like industry plants or whatever. And this is kind of that, but 50, 60 years ago.
How many people you think are out there because of the mob?
Like currently or in general?
Currently, like, obviously, like, we know the mob's, like, calmed down, like, quite a bit, right? Since, like, the 50s, say.
Yeah.
But, like the Rat Pack, like, that's got to be, like,
Oh, yeah.
somehow involved, right?
Well, Sinatra
Yeah,
famously,
that's
like,
an
big
entire...
friends with a lot of the Mafia guys, like...
Right.
Yeah. And that was crazy because he wasn't like sneaky about it. Like he was having dinner with them and like they were at his club and he's just hanging out. But yeah, I know what you're saying. I don't know if I was able to
down some gabagool.
Yeah. I don't know how many modern versions are. You could probably, I'm sure you could probably find a couple that like have some dubious origin stories and things, but
probably like street gangs today, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
That's probably what we got.
Well,
today.
and then if the Mafia decided, hey, if we just go straight and we just start a record company, like, you know what I mean? Like it's not illegal for them to have a record company. It's unfortunate part of that, how this business works or how business in general works. But if you just start a regular business, it's fine.
Or it's sports betting now, right? It's
yeah, dude.
What these guys are getting wrapped up with the Mafia for.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy to see the Mafia in the news again. Yeah. It's like I thought we were done with you guys. Come on, calm down. Yeah,
that dude in the FBI with the crazy eyes just coming out. We got the mob.
Yeah,
I think
that's
guys.
just like that's his dream. He's like, I'm so excited. I watched The Godfather over and over, and then I watch Untouchables, and then yeah. So yeah, the more a song got played, the more people heard it, and the more they heard it, the more people liked it, and that means the more money they would spend to try and hear that artist. And so this feedback loop of basically engagement its foundations were of like modern TikTok and streaming services, all of that based on this kind of format that they had going back then. Now, the mob figured out at least a century ago how to transform something emotional into something that they could sell, which is creepy and scary, but it's cool. And then we get hits from this era, that define generations and early rock and roll, rhythm and blues. It's worth remembering that a lot of these artists, they might have gotten a lot of popularity, but that stuff wasn't like crafted by them right there in the studios. Like it was kind of manufactured in a way, or like almost, I can't think of the different word. Manufactured seems all right. So yeah, now you had in the 50s, America caught in this cultural explosion. Teenagers now had money and radios and they had nothing to do. And so you have television coming out and music no longer just like a super random thing or backdrop. it was now largely identifiable to these youths that now had all this time and money to be doing things. So rock and roll, this rebellious stuff, started becoming more and more popular among the young people. Well, as soon as people started paying attention that that's what people were liking, they're like, well, we got to get a guy like that, which is kind of interesting. And probably most famous version of this is a man known as Elvis Presley. He was just a fella from small town Mississippi who's had this like really good voice that was able to kind of paint the picture of the gospel and blues, but also
Sounds like a good Southern fella.
he's a nice white boy. You know what I mean? Really easy to market to the broad racist people of the 50s. And even if everybody didn't like him back then, it was more digestible, right? And he didn't invent anything. He didn't like craft anything. He did take a lot of influences, and that's fine. That's not, I don't knock Elvis for the music that he made. He made a couple questionable personal choices, but he was like a poster boy for what record companies saw as like the next thing. They knew that gospel and rhythm and blues and all this stuff was getting super popular, but they kind of didn't want it to not be a white guy that was selling it. So they got a guy who sounded like a lot of the black musicians, and they're like, here's some money. Let's take you to go do this stuff. And I don't know. So, have you seen the movie Sinners?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have.
There's a really great line in that movie talking about the blues. They say they like the blues, they just don't like who sings it. And I was like, yeah, that's true. Especially at that time, like just very poignant. And that's the business model that Elvis was kind of built on. Like he had a love for this music, so he was very talented at it, and he had this sharp chiseled jaw and, movie star looks, and then had this like dark energy about him too. So he was like this perfect thing to like, because you couldn't get like a two straight lace guy to do this stuff because it wouldn't work. So you need a guy that kind of could do all of it. And also he's from Mississippi. Like he was raised on this kind of music. He lived in poverty. Like he knew this stuff, right? So it just kind of worked out. And then you get his puppet master, Colonel Tom Parker, involved. This is kind of like the beginning of manipulative managers in the music business. He wasn't obviously a real colonel. He was not even from the United States. He's like a Dutch immigrant and also a carnival worker who had dubious ties to potentially the Mafia underworld. So that's weird.
It checks out.
Yeah. And he knew how to get people to be invested in something, and he saw Elvis as just a big old brand. He was like, I can sell this guy. Like I can do it. And he did. He produced, mass marketed, monetized like everything about this dude. And he also took 50% of Elvis's earnings, which is crazy to me. He had locked him into these very exploitive contracts, made decisions that prioritized his revenue over different like musical and art tastes, right? Elvis wanted to famously tour internationally. He wanted to go to Europe. He wanted to go to Asia. He was like, I want to go all over the world. Everybody wants to see me. And Parker said, no, we're going to put you in Las Vegas, which is basically the world if you don't think about it. But really it was Parker didn't have a valid passport and was like in the country illegally for the most part. So he just didn't want to get arrested. So that's pretty messed up. But now Elvis, kind of gets locked into this stuff. He is like one of the first musicians to have a very long-term residency in Las Vegas, and very famous. Like people did come in droves to see him, but he eventually, his mental capacity could not take it, and eventually cracked in a lot of different ways. But many of Elvis's biggest hits, obviously, covers originally written by black musicians. So that was kind of another point of this, hey, we need a white guy to sing these songs. Hound Dog, which is Big Mama Thornton, and then Arthur Crudups, That's All Right, which is Those are banger songs. But a big issue that I've seen people talk about with Elvis is like, well, he just kind of did this music and then didn't give any like appreciation or anything. That was like, I don't think he was allowed to. I think they wanted people to think that he wrote this stuff, like especially back then where they couldn't like really look into a lot of that things. And I've seen a couple videos of him like in live concerts and he talks about these people. So it's not like he didn't know, but like you buy the Elvis record, it's not going to say with music written by so and so and so. It's going to try and look like Elvis did all of it cuz he's the brand, he's the product. So, and
Well, I forget which songs they were, but Led Zeppelin also
oh yeah.
had a few songs that you could like literally like transplant from black artists in the United States. Just
Yeah. Well,
drop it
and
into their music, and that's
I remember I read Keith Richards' book a few years ago, and he was talking about, they would buy Muddy Waters records and stuff and like listen to it, and they loved it so much. And, the Stones, they got a lot of crap for being a little crazy, but one of the things that they would do is they would bring Muddy Waters to England and play because they knew people loved him there, which is like you don't see a lot of that, especially back then. And I think that's kind of like a big part of, you can make the argument, yeah, like, okay, so this is originally black music and then these guys took it. But I think where a big difference in some of these bands is like, did they give back when they could? Like with the Stones bringing Muddy Waters on, or like XYZ artist bringing BB King out with them, and that's another part is BB King famously commenting on Elvis and people saying that he stole music. He's like, you can't steal music. It's like
yeah.
it's just out there. And I'm like, hey, if BB King says you can't steal it, I'm gonna trust him because he knows more about it than I do. But yeah, so now you have this figurehead of we can kind of take this music and we can make it digestible for a lot of the racist whites, and that's kind of what Elvis was all about. Not him personally, but like his branding and Colonel Tom Parker and everything. So eventually you get to where this jumps from record sales to now branding, and that Elvis was a big part of it. You had Elvis everything. Like Colonel Tom Parker famously sold "I hate Elvis" and "I love Elvis" buttons. Like he's, I'm gonna make money.
I'm playing both sides.
I always come out on top. Yeah, which is crazy. Like it's smart, but it's like, all right, well, at a certain point, maybe you don't need to make money on everything, but it's okay.
That guy did.
Yeah, that guy, you got to give him credit. He definitely knew how to make some money, but yeah. So now you have, by the end of the 50s, at the beginning of the 60s, you have the British invasion into the United States when the Beatles came over. And that's the biggest, that was like, okay, now we know where the money's going to be at now. Now we know how music's going to evolve. And pretty much as soon as that happened and the teenage market saw like in person what was going on, like it just exploded. It was crazy. Every teenager wanted electric guitars. Every label wanted to cash in on some part of this thing. These promoters that ran different clubs were now forced to like expand drastically to handle the huge amount of people that wanted to go to these things. And then you get merchandising and then TV syndication stuff. Like definitely a lot of different aspects that were just now surging because basically since Elvis, there wasn't anything like this. And Elvis was stuck in Vegas at this point. So it's like, okay, well, we don't know how to handle this infrastructurally, so we have to expand a lot. And one of the big parts of this was just making venues. So you have a lot of arena shows at this point because you're not going to get a band to go to like every single little town in a state. You have centralized locations, so football stadiums and baseball arena, like all these things are like starting to get just jam packed with people, which a lot of these like old pictures of, I don't know, like Woodstock, like the original Woodstock, where there's just hills covered in people. It's like
Mm-hmm.
super crazy
Mm-hmm.
to think about. But at the same time, you have Motown starting to get a little more popular in Detroit. Berry Gordy in the late 50s, early 60s, he started putting together teams of different songwriters, musicians, choreographers. And his goal was to kind of like build these marketable and fun artists. He had the Supremes, the Temptations, and even Stevie Wonder early on, right? They had this clean, polished look that could cross over into white America while basically capitalizing on the reverse switch that Elvis gave to their music. Like, all right, so we basically just got to polish everything up and make everything fun, but also, you know, make sure it's good because people are going to want it. But Gordy had worked at Ford Motor Company in Detroit. He kind of put the label together like an assembly plant. He had every artist, every song, every outfit, everything was fine tuned for mass market appeal. He was like had a very interesting system. It's kind of funny to see how like his origin working for Ford influenced this. He also had very tight contracts similar to what Henry Ford would like. Royalties very small. Image was everything. If you couldn't keep your image and public persona, like you were out. And it had to be family friendly stuff. So they kind of were a, I don't know, it was like a conglomerate almost. Like you had to kind
Mm-hmm.
of keep to this system, and if you could stay on. You weren't going to make a lot, but you weren't going to make a little, I guess. So yeah, in the 60s, the music and entertainment economy was kind of all over the place because it intermixed with radio, television, and then even in movies. You know, now we had a lot of musical stuff, but it wasn't like musicals. It was like pop music intertwined, and it just made it a lot more accessible, but also broadened the market to a certain extent. But now you have to find new and interesting ways to be more popular and get more money in terms of like having staying power, right? So they would start to do like long-term contracts and try and own the image as a whole, which is definitely something that is murky and kind of creepy also. I think this isn't this. So they started with Marvin Gaye is a good beginning point because you know he famously died not very old, right? I don't know if he was one of the 27, but he was like he was younger, and then as soon as he died, the Motown records were like, all right, well he's gone, but like how do we capitalize on that? And I guess that's it's more in like the 90s when that really takes off, but you get into this thing with record contracts called the death clause. Are you familiar with this?
Not super, but I understand that there's some things with like publishing rights, like basically depending on what you sign, who you sign it with, and basically what they're allowed to do with your work.
Yeah. Yeah. So Marvin Gaye's a good example. I think a better example is Kurt Cobain. So the death clause is essentially an insurance clause in a lot of like big time record contracts. And essentially, yeah, it's like what can happen with the music and the image and likeness and everything once the artist is no longer, right? Kurt Cobain's a big example because Kurt famously hated commercialization. He hated all of that stuff. He thought it was dumb that they were popular. Like he hated all of that stuff. And then as soon as he died, you get Nirvana slapped on like everything,
Mm-hmm.
because that's part of the death. Like him dying gave Geffen Records more of a say in how the image was going to be used. So basically, Geffen and Courtney Love now had more ownership in what was going to happen with Nirvana stuff than Dave and Chris. So it was like a weird way where they were able to outvote and capitalize on it. And I don't know that Dave and Chris, like how they voted in that kind of thing, but just for instance, like if they decided, no, we don't want to do that, we need to stick to Kurt's memory, it wouldn't have mattered because Geffen has Kurt's vote now, and then Courtney is going to obviously capitalize on that because she sucks. But yeah, which is a little...
Yeah, I saw a like a jersey type shirt the other day at Walmart that had like a Nirvana logo on it and it had like numbers on it, and
yeah.
I'm like, you know, I've
The two things
definitely
Kurt
read
loved the
quotes.
most is sports and Walmart
Exactly.
t-shirts.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
was just like, man. But yeah, no, exactly right. He doesn't own the rights to his stuff anyway.
Yeah.
He's
Right.
not here, you know.
Yeah. So that I kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but another thing that was starting to happen was instead of labels trying to find somebody who could fit an image or find somebody that they could like profit off of their image or style, they just started to make styles up. Like the Monkees, I think, is probably the most famous example of like a crafted top to bottom band that completely fictional, which is pretty interesting. But another one that I think is not just as straightforward is Milli Vanilli. Milli Vanilli, famous for, you know, they got in trouble for that they were lip syncing their songs. They were they were German, but they were very handsome guys. They had like a very model like look to them, long hair, very tan skin. You know, they had all of it, but apparently they liked this studio voice that they had for these guys, and so Milli Vanilli is touring and doing all this stuff and winning Grammys and everything, and then it comes out they are lip syncing at one of their concerts or something, and then it's a huge scandal in 1990. And it's interesting because like I looked it up, and these guys were like, yeah, we wanted to sing, but the record guys, they wouldn't let us. And I'm like, well, that's dumb. And like I've heard them sing, they're not terrible, so I don't really understand what the thing was, but it's another like subplot to the Monkees thing where they are like,
Right.
well, these guys have the right look, they don't quite have the sound that we want. And maybe it was one of those things where they're like, if they sound a little more like this, we can make just that much more money on it or something like that. But instead, Billy Vanilli is like it's almost like a nightmare tale you tell to people in early music stuff. They're like, you want to don't turn yourself into Milli Vanilli. Always record your own stuff. Yeah. At the same time, you get like the more record company contracts that are getting more and more tight. You get artists who are fighting back against stuff like this. John Fogerty, big example. He just was like, I'm going to go do my own thing. And then they tried to sue him for sounding like himself, which is hilarious to me. He had to like bring a guitar into the courtroom and play the songs, and he's like, see how it's different? So then you have like Prince's whole thing with his record company is where he just turned himself into a symbol. He is the artist formerly known as Prince, and then he would write slave on his face and makeup and stuff. And like, I think a very, obviously it's not a direct parallel, but like it's very important, I think, for artists to have had some sort of like pushback on how overreaching these contracts were. Like finding out about some of these things that they were like locked in for however long to do this, and they were like had to play so many shows a year, and like then you get into the
you gotta think too, like these guys are musicians, they're not attorneys, you know,
right?
They don't know how to read legal documents, you know,
Yeah.
They're just like, I'm gonna get paid for this, like I can like pay to keep my heat on and my lights on, like
you're gonna pay me to travel. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah. It reminds me of like, well, the the NWA thing where when they kind of forced Ice Cube to quit because he was not getting paid an equal share despite his contributions, it's like they were already not making that much money. And then he's like, I'm out of here because I'm writing most of the songs. You guys are kind of screwing me over. And then like even further down the road, the rest of the guys in NWA are also not making that much money either. So it's like they don't know what the contracts are that they signed. They're just some dudes who wanted to make some money, and then by the time they figure it out, a lot of times it's too late for them to kind of push back and get even in a way. But yeah, also really fun thing that happened in the 90s is these random dudes in Sweden became like the master producers for pop. Like they, this guy, Dennis Pop, that's his name, and Max Martin, they run Sharon Studio, like Sharon, the guy, the fairy guy in the River Styx, right? Charon?
Yeah. Charon. Yeah, I know.
Something like that. But
Something like that.
In Stockholm, Sweden, and they famously did so many artists like this. They just propped them up with these hits. They did stuff for Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, and they like had a methodology to just make hits. Like it was a formulaic thing, and they figured it out. And you know, all of these worldwide superstars were going to them to get their number ones, which is also like at a certain point when you're optimizing every single note and lyric and everything down to the very bottom, is that fun anymore? You know what I mean? Like, it is not a direct parallel, but you watch the videos of these dudes playing like Super Smash Bros tournaments or like Mortal Kombat tournaments, and they have like figured out the system, not the game, but they have figured out the system, the controls, and they just like game it so very precise that they're just doing crazy stuff. It's like, is that fun anymore? I don't.
Well, when you optimize like a workflow like that, like you're losing a lot of like soul and performance in the project. So like you get what you get out of it.
Yeah,
I mean, that reflects in a lot of those songs from that time.
Yeah, I also think it's a very good kind of indicator of, okay, well now at that point, especially in the 90s, that is for the most part. Obviously today we have even more access, but like at the 90s with the internet and everything, the way like how technology had advanced, how even television was now like so much more accessible, you have this moment where so many people are able to consume this stuff. And so now, instead of it being a very smaller group of people who enjoy music, who are like kind of at the helm of being the ones to say this is good or these bands are good and I'm going to help them out and do this. Well, now everybody's got to say, and unfortunately, the vast majority of people are not as intelligent as they would like to think. And so you get this more easily digestible stuff that becomes more and more popular. That's why, like, I don't know, when you get to like, this is movies, but Rotten Tomatoes, like the audience score is super high, but the critic score is super low. It's like, well, yeah, it's a dumb movie. Like,
right.
It's dumb fun. Like it's not fun, but it's not a great movie. It's just entertaining. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Like nobody's critiquing like LMFAO on their musical talents or like the depths of their lyrics.
Yeah, it's fun. It gets people going, and that's about all that matters. Yeah. Other kind of, I mentioned the Death Clause and other artists that kind of followed in Kurt Cobain's path, I guess. When Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls both murdered, the same kind of thing. They had all of these like post-ominous albums that were now released. They had all these recordings that they're like, we gotta pump those out, because also in terms of like knowing that the artist is no longer there, that's when most of them get to be substantially more popular than they already were too. So at a certain point, and I think it's more evident in hip hop, where you have so many recordings that just don't make it into any of the albums or don't even make it into songs. They're just recording raps and flows and things like that. And so they have all this banked material. Well, now that artist is dead, and they're like, all right, well, now we can just throw that stuff out there and people will buy it just because that artist is dead now, which is sad, but also, like, I guess sad for a couple of reasons. Yeah.
It's like that Chappelle Show joke where he's at the club and they're like listening to this new Tupac song. He's like, I wrote this song in '94.
Yeah, I remember there's a really dumb moment in my life, but me and my brother, we were going to Walmart, and he was in, like, back when Walmart had like a whole CD section, and he found this thing, and it was a Tupac CD. He's like, "Oh, I got Tupac." I was like, "Oh yeah, that's cool." And I'm like 6 maybe, and I was like, "What? Is that like a new one?" He's like, "Well, yeah, but he got shot." And I was like, "Again?" And I had no idea he had been shot multiple times at this point, but like, he has already been dead at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of the death clause is also, it in terms of marketability, it's not just, you know, your image and likeness, it's also any unreleased music. And also, if the masters haven't been, you know, purchased by that person's the people that handle their, like, their family or whatever, then they can remaster and re-up different things. And it's not just, you know, rappers that this happens to, because it happened when John Lennon died. It happened obviously when Elvis died. Michael Jackson, another big one. Aaliyah, when she died in 2001, a lot of her unreleased music was hawked out there. And I guess, like, it feels dirty to me, but that's just me. Like, I get it, they recorded it, so at a certain point they definitely wanted to release it, but not like that.
I don't know. I feel like I would want to release something that I know is finished.
Right.
And, like, as long as it's finished, like,
Yeah.
I don't think.
Well, and the other part of it is like,
with that.
these record companies are throwing producers on this music that probably didn't even work with the artist to finish these things, and it's like, that's weird. Like, it would be one thing. I know when, like, Mac Miller died, and his producer that he worked with like everything, and like a bunch of his friends came together and finished that album, like, that makes sense because that's people he surrounded himself with and kind of knew the expectation of where they wanted it to go. But then you get, like, Tupac dying, and then some Joe Schmo from Sony or wherever, Death Row Records, to just finish it up, and it's like, okay, well, that feels weird.
Yeah.
An interesting part of this whole death clause thing is when Michael Jackson died in 2009, Sony, who owned his stuff, right, their market value rose by over $1 billion within 1 week of his death.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? And then, like, within a month, they had already, like, re-released his catalog, documentaries with his, you know, stuff about him. A different merchandise was rebranded, re-released, like, all within a month of this guy dying.
You just always hope, like, with these things, that it's done in good taste and, like, in memory of a person,
Right.
and not like, okay, this is our chance to make, like, some really good money off of this shit. And, like, people do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you just hope people's doing the right thing with stuff like this.
Yeah. Well, and then another aspect of it is kind of in the streaming world that we're in now, where, you know, you get an artist that dies, and then all of a sudden their name is in front of, like, every platform that you're using to consume music, and it's like, okay, do I actually want to listen to this because I am curious, or is it like, A, they're dead now, so, like, I'm curious about that, but B, now this record company is trying to profit off of these guys, so they're, like, pushing, and even if the record company isn't, the streaming platform might be, you know what I mean? Like, they're
Right.
it's just got a lot of weird layers to it.
So I know, like, with, like, the distributors that like we use. We use like DistroKid, right? And that's what puts our music up on like YouTube and
Sure.
Spotify, all that. So you can go in there and like check off as an option. Like you can pay to like leave it as a legacy item to basically where it would
Sure.
stay basically up on there for, even after you die.
Yeah.
Now, I think like the thing it's different with that, like I think it's like 50 years after you die, like people are allowed to have that stuff anyway
Oh
because of
yeah, for
copyright
public.
laws.
Yeah, I think it's like 60 or 70. But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Something
Like it goes into
changed.
public domain.
Yeah, something changed recently, but yeah, like at some point, like it's going out there anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, and then you get into
Yeah.
get a AI, they did that for Tupac too with the hologram. We get a hologram
Oh
of
yeah,
you play
those are
Coachella.
sweet.
I mean, it's cool, but it's creepy also. Like, I don't know how to feel about it, but it's no different than just watching a video of them, I guess. But
How long do you think until they've got like full like animatronic, got their entire like personality like uploaded via like AI? They've
turn them into a Chuck E. Cheese band.
Oh, dude, no, I'm saying like
like a legitimate
Black Mirror, like we've got like so these artists or whatever, they're like whatever contracts they've signed,
Yeah.
they're like I've given you all this information over. Now, what if the record companies are just like, okay, we can upload you into like one of these like silicone robots, and now you got John Mayer in your home or something.
Oh, no.
I don't know.
Get him out. Yeah, I don't know how far off that is, but that is kind of also like it's very
It's the logical
much,
next step, dude.
Yeah, it's very much a what do they call it? The uncanny valley of like when a robot looks kind of human but not human enough. Yeah, I don't like that at all. I don't. As much as fun as it would be to watch a real life Jimi Hendrix play guitar like he did, I don't think him as a robot would be a good legacy item like that. That's I think it gets into the realm of all right. Well, this feels very disturbing.
Yeah, but think of like the just like the music that would come from that kind of existential crisis.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, you get some probably really creative things that would happen, but at what cost? Yeah, the advancement of technology on music is definitely like it's multifaceted and also crazy. Like dipping into the origins of streaming, like in 1999 with Napster doing their thing. They started the music streaming thing without even like kind of realizing it. It was piracy then, right? It was we're taking music that somebody bought a CD, put it on the line, and then gave people the ability to download it. And basically, Lars Ulrich got mad about it, and
then basically Metallica ruined it for everybody.
Yeah, but it's weird because if you think about it, like if they would have figured out a way to make that work for them, they could have been on the cutting edge of this. What ended up being streaming, but like the straw that broke the camel's back is they got it was that song that was for like Mission Impossible, and
Really?
yeah, Mission Impossible 2 or 3, I think it was. I don't even remember the song now, but yeah, Metallica got real weird about it, and understandable to the point to where like they had no idea what this could mean, but they just knew they didn't like it, and I understand that aspect, but people were like, you have enough money. And I don't know that that's generally what they were concerned about, but whatever the reason is that Napster was just the starting point, because as soon as Napster died, a bunch more popped up. We have, LimeWire is probably the biggest one. Man, I've ruined many a computer with LimeWire. And
Right.
that was just part of growing up. And
That was a rite of passage as a millennial,
yeah,
destroying the family computer from downloading Soulja Boy and System of a Down mashed up.
the one that always cracked me up was it was Cats in the Cradle, Guns N' Roses, but it was actually Ugly Kid Joe.
Yeah.
Like, it's not Guns N' Roses, never played that song. Yeah, and then you get like different torrent websites, and eventually those all kind of, I don't know that they highlighted anything for record companies, but they definitely gave some other companies some ideas. And so you get iTunes is like kind of the first where they're like, hey, pay a little bit and then you can get this money or this music. But then you have various streaming platforms beginning. So Spotify, um, that was, I don't know, early to 2010s. I don't know when specifically they started it in, because it's like Sweden that they started in, but eventually they were like, hey guys, you don't want your stuff pirated. Here's what we're going to do. You give us licensing for your thing. We're going to charge people monthly premiums and we're going to give you money for that. Unfortunately, it's such a fraction of the money that they could have been made. And now that's all it is streaming everything. Everything's streaming. And, I think the average profit per stream is like a 300th of a cent or something like that, for a certain amount of plays. And obviously for people like Taylor Swift and the big hitters, that's like, okay, we're gonna get a lot of money because our stuff is played a lot. But then smaller artists, I don't know how much. Like, do you even know if there was any kind of revenue from Spotify from your guys' stuff?
I'm actually pulling it up right now, I can tell you. And it'll like break it down to
Like per play and stuff?
I think so. Like, let me just pick
Yeah.
one off of here. I mean, it'll tell me okay, I gotta go to the bank. Basically, it shows me. Okay, here's a song that's gotten. It doesn't even tell me how much plays. It's a fraction of a penny, like
Yeah.
literally, and it's like a decimal point
Yeah.
of like numbers that like goes on for like ever.
Way too long. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's very very nominal per stream.
Right. Yeah, and it's tough because, like, I don't know, back in the day, obviously, like, record sales were big for up and coming artists, because if you could open for a big band and follow them on tour or something like that, and then people start hearing your stuff and buy your records, then you can start to pay for better recording, whatever, and it would like compound into being able to produce better stuff and market better and whatever. But now everybody's streaming everything. You can't convince people to buy whole records as easily as you used to be able to, and you're not getting any money on that. So now you have to tour, but like, how do you get more popular if you're only being able to play certain types of places? You know what I mean? And I feel like it's just super unfortunate because there's a lot of like up and coming bands that don't make it because of that.
You there?
Yeah.
Okay, there you are. Yeah, so I came back and I found one of the songs on here. It's worth one stream I have on here was worth point.
I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, you stream that song about 3 billion times and you'll get a nice cheeseburger somewhere.
Killing it, dude.
Yeah. So like, so now in the streaming age, you're not just a musician anymore, because you have to be able to market yourself, because you can't fund your marketing by selling records. You have to market yourself to be able to get people to stream you, which then you need that information to convince venues to book you.
Exactly.
It's just a weird like mix of everything. Like, I don't know.
Musicians of 2025 have become content creators.
Yeah.
Like it, if you want to, that's just if you want attention.
Yeah.
If you want to make a living off of it, you pretty much have to become a merchandise company.
Yeah.
I mean, you could kind of make a little bit of money playing shows, but even then, like, you still gotta get the attention to get people to come to your shows.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know.
so it's definitely like basically could put the kibosh on like a lot of these up and coming guys that you used to be able to, see flourish eventually. Like they put a lot of work in and then they, grind it out and then now they can pay a marketing company to do stuff for them. But now it's like they have to do all the marketing and all the writing and all the performing. And then maybe you might get able to tour once or twice and then, that's if you're lucky. It's
Might be able to get enough gas to get to the next gig.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's just weird how drastic everything has shifted in terms of like the way that, especially just the way performing is. Like even like not just music, but like if you want to be funny, you want to be a comedian, you have to also do the same stuff. Like, and it's wild to me that that's like
Yeah.
the method. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. I had lost my place, but it's, I guess essentially like at the point where streaming took over, you get artists that instead of like legacy artists, old school guys, or not old school in general, but just people who have been around a little bit, their new methodology becomes selling their masters, right? Like selling the whole catalog, and that's for like insane money that they don't really have to worry about doing any of that stuff anymore. And I think that like it's crazy. Like you see Bob Dylan selling his entire catalog for like $400 million. Springsteen, I think, was like five or
Yeah.
600 million. Just like these insane sale prices, and you're like, okay, well, what does that even mean for you as a person now? Like what?
Yeah.
Like there's not a real good way for my mind to process something like that, but they get to capitalize on different things. Like we get biopics and things like that kind of drum up success. But like even that, is that the artist deciding that they want a biopic done, or is that the company being like, hey, if we have this biopic produced, we can get X amount of streams on this thing or whatever, or we can sell this
Well, I mean,
many.
at the end of the day, it's got to make the companies money
Yeah,
for them to even want to think about being interested in
yeah,
it.
yeah. Super, super weird where it has, how it has come. We get all the way back from cave shouting and bone flutes and things like this to where we are now, which is kind of why I wanted to do this topic. It's just like a very, very tangible, and like everybody can kind of understand music in general. Like I know what music on that level, and how it has went from within 1,000 years even barely being written down to now like every aspect of it is monetized, which is crazy. I guess it's also like kind of a paradox of art in general. Like you get physical art, like actual paintings and stuff, you get the point to where now it's a banana taped to a wall, and that's people are paying money for that. You know what I mean? And it's like starts to dilute the soul of what it was at one point, and that's you said that when we were talking about those guys in Sweden, kind of like making every single note and every single thing be a part of this larger picture, and how it takes the soul out of what's going on. Is and it's kind of like that's kind of how I feel listening to some of these newer artists. Now granted, not all of them. Like I don't want to be like the old guy that's like, this new music's terrible, but like there's some where you're like, yeah, they're just kind of cashing a paycheck, like they're just making money, which good for them, I guess. But
It's always the easiest ones that are accessible to,
yeah,
like, all, like, the music that's out there that's like really good and like heartfelt. It's being played right down the street from
yeah,
me, and
at the
like some
local
local bar.
bar, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and there's a good possibility that nobody's ever going to hear that,
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's nice, and it's kind of like almost like I don't know. It's interesting because this whole thing, this whole conversation, this whole script is like, look at how crazy it is that music is more and more and more and more accessible. But then, like, if you really want to find the real stuff, you kind of got to take it back a little ways to like go back to when you did have to travel to go find something. And maybe it's not very far, maybe it's just down the road at your local bar or whatever. But like, you don't need to rely on the ease of access to find something that is of quality. Like,
Well, I
it's
mean, it's like it's art,
yeah,
right? So like the value of art, right? It's like it's dependent on like who it's by, like a piece of
right,
art that you buy, right? And like
yeah,
maybe how many hands it's changed, how long it's been around, or
right,
whatever. But it's this one piece that hasn't really been like watered down or mass
yeah,
produced.
sure,
So, and like maybe that's what you're getting with some of the more local stuff. You're getting something
yeah,
that's not super mass produced, something that was just like part of a workflow, stamped, got the okay, sent out the door
yeah,
type thing,
a little
I
more
mean,
raw,
you're also gonna get a lot more amateur stuff.
yeah, yeah,
But I think as far as the value in it though, like I don't know,
yeah,
there's just something else. I don't know.
yeah. Given your experience in making music and actually like putting stuff out, do you have any like what kind of advice would you tell a younger Matthew that if he wanted to go back in time and kind of guide him through that?
Go to college, stay focused. I think it would have been more. Man, it's hard to say because like a lot of this stuff you kind of just figure out like as you're going and
Yeah,
like as you meet people. I think I probably would have been a little less worried about putting out things like putting out recordings that like I would have needed to save more money for or something.
yeah,
Or waiting for like the perfect sound or whatever when really
right,
I should have just been pushing this stuff out, with what I had available.
sure.
I don't know. Maybe that's bad advice, but
Oh, I like it. Yeah, I think that it's also like this in general. Just like if you want your music to be out there and everybody consume it, I think you have to be understanding of the price that comes with that. And I think that there's also merit to there's people who refuse to let their art become a monetized currency kind of thing. Like there's people who are okay with their song becoming a stadium anthem at the football game, and there's people who are not. You know what I mean? Like, and at the end of the day, whatever you like, that's fine. I'm not. This whole thing isn't like judging any of the new stuff that people are latching onto or anything. It's just interesting to see the trending of like where it all kind of started, and the start of popular music in general is in the hands of the mafia and like
exploitation.
exploitation. That's also where it ends up is the artist still being exploited after 100 years of this kind of thing going on. And makes me think of, and this is a quote from Prince during his whole thing, and he said, if you don't own your masters own you, which is yeah, which is pretty poignant. I yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of all I got, Matt. I'm glad you were here to be able to do this with me. I'm glad that we got you on finally. It's been a little bit before,
Yeah.
but
Thanks for the thorough lesson. That
yeah,
was
now you know.
very
Now, next time
interesting.
somebody asks you why you don't put music out anymore, you just be like, "Listen, it's the mafia, is what it is," and then you just
It's a
let them go.
combination of the mafia and something with early humans,
Yeah, it's it's
bones.
a survival tactic, and I'm not trying to survive in a cave. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah. Once again, please tell everybody about um, Alex. What is it? Alex's.
Alex's Lemonade Stand is the name
Yeah.
of the charity.
Yep. And then the Lucid Wasteland is the band. We'll have a link in the description where you guys can find find their stuff and check it out. It's not just you're a buddy of mine. I do enjoy your music as well. So I'm glad to have been a
Thanks.
part of a little bit of it, and glad that you could come on here and live.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Been integral. Just putting us up, with the different podcasts.
Yeah.
It's
Hey,
been a lot of
we
fun.
got
You've
you
been part of
probably
that.
dozens of listeners, which is like 40,000 of cents, Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. And if you are listening to the show and you want a topic that you think I would do a good job talking about, in the description, go to Linktree. There's a thing that you can click on in there, topic suggestion. Otherwise, do all the things. Share this with your friends. Go and share Lucid Wasteland's music with your friends. And with that, keep questioning the past. The future will thank you. And I will see you next time. Bye.